Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Hollis.
Hello, how are you, Tricia?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's beautiful
Good.
Friday here.
Yes, Fridays are always great. Today we have Hollis Jo McCollum. She is a fantasy author, and on your website it says dark fantasy with inspired romance. So I'm ready to dig in. For our listeners who may not know what dark fantasy is, what is your definition of dark fantasy?
So I like to tell people, I used to say when I first started that I was just a fantasy author, and I didn't realize I was dark until I was told that I was by readers and editors. So dark fantasy, first of all, you have some like spookier themes, if you will. Like I do have a character who is a werewolf, and and he's, yeah, he deals with that, but that in itself and a lot of the themes I think are what make things dark a lot of the time. And like certain, there's epic fantasy where of course if there's war and people die and everything, but I think what makes it dark is a lot of those like more horror driven themes that lean a little bit more into a monster situation that isn't a dragon. And I tend to do that. But I, like I said, I didn't realize I was dark, but I have been told often enough that I am to know it's true. So
You're now in the acceptance phase of that, I'm seeing.
I accept. I am. I do go a little bit dark, and that's fine. But I also enjoy horror films and things like that. So it's I guess it kind of makes sense. Plus, I am like many readers, I think, when I started reading, I skipped over YA even when I was that age, and I went straight to adult.
Okay.
I went from like C Spot Run to like Lord of the Rings. And that was so I jumped into adult themes at around the age of 10.
Okay.
And I think that that kind of just maybe does the mindset thing. So I didn't have the lighter YA transition that a lot of people have. I just drove straight into adulthood with the reading.
Ben, well, I see on your website your current series is the Rashawn series, and I think you're about to release the third book, right?
I am, yes. So we have, and I have the books right in front of me, of
Okay.
course. So I have To Save a World is the first book, The Queen Witch is the second book, and then Tear in the World, which if you want to see the cover, just go to my website, and all that. I design all my own covers and page layouts. And so yeah, that's hopefully next week. It should be at press, but it will definitely be this month. So I'm working on the most difficult part of the page layout right now.
Fine. Yeah, that's that. I hired someone for that, so I have mad respect for people that can do it themselves. I'm not the techie. But dive in and tell us about this world, the characters. I want to know everything.
Okay, well, so what I like, the little short version is that it's epic dark fantasy with inspired romantic subplots, which just to give a very brief overview of that. But it is inspired dark fantasy. So we have kind of your epic themes. To Save a World is aptly named. They do save the world. They do it in a lot of fantasy series. I'm not I'm not unique there, but I am unique in that my main characters are all elves, or of other races. Of course, I made my own world up like we like to do, and and I have kind of a different thing, and it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy world. So in To Save a World, you start the world is already dying. The gods have killed each other off in something I called the Heavenly Wars. The gods got angry and they started fighting, and then they killed each other. And now there's no one to manage the planet. And so you have seasons don't make any sense. Mountain ranges popping up overnight, whirlpool, like things just being swallowed by the ocean, all sorts of craziness because you could be hot summer in the morning, by winter by afternoon it's snowing. There is nothing. Crops are dying, obviously. People are dying. You can't, everyone's getting sick. There's no order to things. It's really terrible. So the main character, well, one of the main characters, Darian, he is a captain of the guard for an elven tribe called the Irani tribe, which are heavily based on ancient Gaelic or Celtic peoples. And he decides that he's going to try to do something, and he's not setting out to save the world. He's setting out to help his people specifically. And then the other main character, Ethne, she's an elf woman, a maiden, and she, frankly, she just wants to get away. In their culture, women aren't allowed to fight. They're not, you've got a very trad wife kind of roles, if you want to use current terminologies. I'm not a Gen Z kid, but I have enough nieces and nephews to know some of the lingo. and yeah, she's not that person. She's taught herself how to fight against the laws of their people and stolen swords from the training chests at the fields and all these other things. And she gets wind of this quest and she just decides to run away, but she does so by following Darian's party out of their village because she figures she's going to run away, but she's like, but it's safer if I do so behind these warriors. Right? And then if I need to scream for help, and then I'll follow them until I get to civilization, and then I'm going to figure it out. And that's kind of her thing. And of course she gets caught. Of course there's situations there, and I'm not going to spoil everything, but yes, they're going and they're in search of a legendary artifact that they don't even know if it exists, that has a lot of magical power, and that one of the ancient wizards created, and he imbued all of his powers into this thing called the Stone of Elysius. And they're looking for it, but so are other people. And so they run into a couple other characters, Aram and Yoselin, and that are also in search of the Stone of Elysius. And they end up searching for it together. But then they end up stumbling upon this crazy old wizard named Tim, because I'm a Monty Python fan. And he tells them about a prophecy wherein they are meant to save the world and bring back two of the old gods to manage things. And I won't say how. But yeah, and of course, they fall in love along the way. That they're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to because she's not being a traditional wife, or because?
Several reasons. Actually, Darian is courting her older sister at the beginning of the book. So, but he doesn't really, and her older sister is like the picture of their society, what a woman ought to be, kind of thing. And she loves her sister, but her sister is like perfect as far as like what everybody wants in a wife in their society. And that's why Darian's courting her, but Darian actually always kind of had a thing for Ethne. And but things there, but then also in the quest, they're part of the prophecy and reasoning that I'm not going to reveal is they're not supposed to fraternize, if you will, in that way, because of certain circumstances that happen. And it does make it more traumatic, and it does make it more difficult, and things like that. But this is a beautiful romantic subplot, so we're gonna say love finds a way. And that's it. But that's again, without getting too detailed with things, that's how it how it is with with To Save a World. And the Queen Witch, we actually come back 20 years after the first book.
Okay.
And I won't reveal who's still alive or anything like that. You got to read the first book to figure out who survives and what happened. Did they save it? Did the world continue to exist, or how is it existing now that they've done something? The world's still there 20 years later.
And did they get the gods back or not?
Okay. I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to tell.
No, we don't want to tell that. So did the elves themselves have magic then?
Well, so magic I think in a lot of different fantasy systems, it kind of works the same as mine, where in the people, those who have the talent or those who decide to study it of any race can learn magic.
Okay.
And that's how it is. So, but also in my world, I make it so that once a wizard becomes really good, and really, really amazing, and this happens extremely rarely. But for example, the wizard Tim is almost 1,000 years old.
Oh, wow.
But he was born human. It's just that he became so good, and such a talented and well-invested wizard that the magic kind of fuses with their being and prolongs their life.
Okay. At
least in my magic system. That's my personal theory, is that they, like once they become as amazing as they possibly can be, the magic starts to become a part of their entire being. And then it just prolongs their life. And like Tim is, he's almost 1,000 years old and he has the white hair and wrinkles, but he rocks around like he's 25, he's spry, he can whatever, he's fine. He has no joint problems or anything because it's the magic that's keeping him alive. It's just that his outward appearance is that of a very old man, but he's healthy as can be.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting you say in a lot of systems that I haven't heard that one. I guess Merlin was sort of like that, but I thought you kind of had to be born into, like, I don't know.
And I meant a lot of, like, any race can learn magic in the world of Rashan, because that's the name of the planet is Rashan. But not everyone chooses to, and not everyone has the gift. Like, you might have somebody who's like, oh, I want to study magic, and then it's just not a talent that they have, so maybe you give it a try and maybe they can light a few candles, but beyond that, they can't really bring it out in themselves. And everybody's at a different level, and most wizards never get to a point where they're able to like prolong their life or even cast without speaking. But like at least and again, this is all kind of imaginary things, but in my mind, the wizards become, once they get to that level of, the magic is just fused with your body, all you have to do is flick your wrist at that point, because you are magic, and all it takes is the thought, because your being is magic, essentially. Right. But if you're just a run-of-the-mill regular wizard, you might learn how to cast certain spells without verbalizing the words, but most people will still have to at least murmur it in order to cast, and it takes energy. And well, in the series, the book To Save a World is actually based on a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I played. So I base a lot of my stuff on Pathfinder D&D role-playing games too.
But yeah, that was going to be my next question. Where did the idea for this whole world come from?
So my best friend and I, and if you, I do have a podcast. The first episode of my podcast, my best friend and I talk about the first book, To Save a World, and like the game versus the book. And and I apologize, my other cat is meowing now.
Oh, we can't hear him. So.
Oh, good. Okay, he's a Siamese and he gets very loud. But yeah, so we, my best friend and I, we kind of made up our own role-playing system. We just sort of came into our own, but we use a lot of the rules from Dungeons, Dragons, and Pathfinder, and we use dice and everything like that. And so the characters of Ethne, Darian, Jocelyn, and Aram, Even Tim, and there's another character named Jeeve who I love dearly. He comes in a little about halfway through, and I love Jeeve. He's another elf. Most of my main characters are elves. Like I said, I have some humans, but they're kind of on the side. And they all were part of the game, and we played this game. And we created the world. I named it Rashawn. Like we just kind of were playing in our own little fantasy world. And then after this particular campaign was over, I loved it. And I was thinking, I'm going to write it down. I just thought it was such a great game. I loved our character development. I wrote it down. And it took me a while because I wasn't thinking it would be anything. Though I've always loved writing. I used to win the contests back in middle school and high school and all those things. And then, you go to college and you just kind of get a mind that you're going to do something else. And then I wrote it and I shared it with friends and family, and they lovingly ganged up on me and said that if I did not publish it, that they would, be extremely angry with me, and that this is good. And I said, wow, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a writer.
Fun.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write and be a pony. Also, when I was very young, I wanted to be a pony. Some Halloween costumes have made that happen.
Well, it's funny because most people want to ride the ponies, but you actually wanted to be the pony.
I wanted to be a unicorn or a pony, and I have made that happen with costumes. I've got some unicorn and pony. I'm good. Yeah, I wanted to be the animal. I didn't want to be the person owning the animal or riding it. I wanted to be a one with the horses. But yeah, so I just decided that I would, and then it was well received. I mean, I know I'm not super well known or anything. Of course, I'm indie published, but yeah. And then my readers who read To Save a World, which it is a complete book. I know it's kind of thick, but I also have a lot of graphics and things in here. So yeah, each of my chapters is a full page graphic and that kind of thing. So that ups the count a little bit. But yeah, it happened. And then the readers of To Save a World said, where's the next book? I want to know what happens next. And I was like, oh, okay, let's do this. I guess I got a series in me. Let's go.
That is so fun. That's such a neat story. So how did you choose to jump ahead 20 years? Did you just want to make sure it was obvious the outcome of whatever happened in the first book?
Well, there's that, and so the elves in my universe live for about 700 years, give or take. And elves are, of course, long-lived, and depending on what fantasy universe you subscribe to, they could be anything from immortal to whatever. And so I decided 700 was a good lifespan. And so number one, since the characters are elves, they 20 years is the equivalent of 3 to 5 years to a human being, right? As far as just life happening, because it's just different when you've got 7 centuries to go. And so there was that, but I also wanted relationships to have time to develop. I wanted the world itself to be settled in its new state that was created at the end of the first book. I wanted it to be that there were people alive that had no memory of what it was like before. That I wanted some of that, and I wanted so I really wanted the characters to have had this period of time in their lives that was really nice, and that they really got to live and just have this idyllic little, but before I messed it all up for them again.
Well, at least in the back of the reader's mind, they know they had that time. So you feel okay that now they're going through this again, right?
That's right. They had a good 20 years. And now we're gonna get really awful to them again. but that's okay. They're really strong. That's what book characters are like. They find a way to muscle through.
Definitely. So does the whole series have a like an overarching arcing um like goal that threads through all three of the books, or is it just sort of like different stages of their world or community or people?
I didn't realize it until finishing the third book. And it's funny, I was just talking to my mother about this last night. I talk to my mom, pretty regularly, and she's actually one of my best editors. And she works for free. She refuses payment. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah, but I mean, I pay her in other ways. She cannot refuse a gift. Uh, but but I have found that companionship and like adult relationships, not just romantic. I mean, there is romantasy. There's a romantasy plot in every book. And also, since I myself am in my 40s, I have a different perspective. It's not all young love. It's not just the beginning. Like there's a whole thing that happens after the beginning of the relationship. That's most of the relationship is muddling, or not muddling, but like working through and rediscovering things through just life together. And so To Save a World is that new love part of the relationship. Um, the Queen Witch actually addresses a lot of the, after the beginning, when you're settling in together, when things are like you're solid, but you're working through it. But also with those adult friendships and people, your found family, your chosen family, and just making time for each other as adults, and things, because that's in the third book in the trilogy, in Terra in the World, and this isn't big spoilers, I promise, this is just a theme, but in the very beginning I have all of the characters gathered, all the main companions gathered for a wedding, and they get this kind of rare moment where after all the other guests have left, they're sitting together and they have this, we're together, and gosh, adult life doesn't let us hang out like we used to because you've got kids, we've got this, we got that, but we still love each other and we still really value this time together. And then of course shit hits the fan, things go wrong, but then when we get back to the end, they all come together again in of course the local tavern, that they all enjoy. And they are, and you have um this theme of them just saying, we really value and appreciate that we can make time for each other as a group of friends, as adults. And I think that I personally really value that. And I think all adults do when you get to be a certain age, and it's just you under and nobody feels bad. Everyone understands that why you haven't seen them for 6 months. And you love them just the same and they love you, but you really miss that contact that you got to have when you were in your 20s, where you could see your friends twice a week or more. And it was fantastic. But yeah, I think just like the human experience of love relationships, yes, but also how relationships evolve throughout time, and how they can evolve in different ways, because you have the people who don't have children, you have the people who have the kids, you have the career focused nuts, the ones who are just like full on workaholic and all these things, but they're all good buddies. And
Yeah, I know. Like in my cul-de-sac over 2020, we would get together like 2 or 3 times a week, like, and just sit on our chairs, like, 12 feet apart and talk on our driveway. And then the next year, when everybody started going on vacations and going away, I was like, wait, where is everyone? Like, so.
see, and isn't that, and you miss it so much. You just are like, my Betty's, it's so good for your heart to just have your friends and just shoot the breeze, and And I think that's I mean, and of course, as writers, we always write what's close to our hearts and what we feel. And yeah, and that's something that, I'm very happy and grateful to have a nice base of friends that I've had for years, since middle school at this point. And I've got these lovely 30 plus year friendships, but uh yeah, I still don't get to see my friends every day. We text, but we make sure to send each other memes on the internet now. But
Yes, that helps. So what is next? If you're wrapping up this series, do you have a new idea, or are there going to be spin-offs, novellas? What are we looking at?
well, I'm already planning. So in my mind, this series, the what I'm just calling the Rashawn trilogy, in the Rashawn series, this is the first trilogy in the series.
Okay.
And the next ones I already have planned out all the way. I have books planned out through 2030.
Oh, wow.
So, and they're all going to be based on D&D games and old
Very.
characters. So the next trilogy in the Rashawn series is going to be called the Histories trilogy. And we'll go back to before the Heavenly Wars, before the gods, fought each other and killed each other and the world got ruined, before all that. And we'll talk about what the world was like and talk about characters that were there, and how that all happened. So I'm really excited. So I get to play more D&D games. Essentially, I've been playing D&D since I was 11 years old. So it's been a while, and I've got a lot of characters I want to bring back to life. And I also really loved, because in Terra in the World especially, I started dropping Easter eggs and in the Aram, one of the characters in Terra in the World, he goes and he sees an old seer, like a woman who's known for divination and everything because he needs her help. And she's very, very old. She's an elf, but she's probably close to 800. She is just ancient, but the thing is, the first volume in the histories called The Key, we go back to when she was young,
Oh,
before
very
she was
cool.
a seer, when she was a dancer for entertainment. Like she was like a gypsy dancer, and what happened to her, because in his encounter with her in Terra in the World, she alludes to her lost love. So of course it's romantasy. Of course I have a romantic subplot. But and then so we meet her. Her name is excuse me. Her name is Kristen Quailvan. And Kristen, we meet her in Terra in the World as a very old woman. And she imparts some advice for Aram in his relationship, as well as, of course, helping him with the quest. But she kind of gives it, and then you have this moment of reflection after he leaves with her where you get to know her a little bit, and I'm going to bring her back in the Histories, Volume 1, and we get to learn who was that lost love, what happened, and how did she go from entertainer to renowned seer? Like how did this happen and all of that. And so in each of those histories books, they will be three separate stories with separate characters, but they will be all previous to the Heavenly Wars. And we'll get to see what more of the world of Rashawn, the cultures of Rashawn. The second book of the histories, Ambition and Justice, is about humans. I'm gonna pay attention to the humans. And the main characters are humans and all of that. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And then I actually have, because people have asked me about the origins of certain characters that we meet in the series, like the main villain in To Save a World, which is a character named Kavan, which, by the way, Kavan is a word that means hollow or empty in Old Gaelic. So I thought it was a great name for a villain.
Yes, definitely.
And he's basically a sociopath, sadistic, psychopathic, so like doesn't have feelings essentially and doesn't care about anybody's feelings. So perfect villain there, but people, my husband actually said, I want to know more about this guy. Like, how did he become like this? And I was like, well, in my mind, he was born like that. And he was like, really? I want to know. And I said, oh yeah, he was born psychopath in my mind. And he goes, well, I'd like to know that story. I said, oh,
That's too easy just to have them born.
well, and there are so many psychopaths in this world. I like to study psychology um, as just a personal interest. And psychopaths are actually way more common than we realize. And it isn't, and most psychopaths never do anything wrong. They really don't. I know we hear about the serial killers and stuff, and that's scary. But most psychopaths, the grand majority of them, just kind of go through life like everyone else, but they do so without having the emotional reactions to life that we have.
Oh, okay.
And they just don't have whatever it is in them that puts them in a bad direction. But they just go through life with a lack of empathy, like that.
Yeah.
And it's okay, and that's it's actually so. I know I was surprised when I was reading a study and they were saying, no, there are millions of psychopaths in this world. It's just that most of them never do anything wrong.
Interesting. Well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, because I think that I am an empath. Like, if you're telling me a story, I'm going to start crying and
Yeah.
I'm going to soak that up. And I might be crying like an hour after I talk to you just because I'm going to soak all of that up. So it makes sense that there would be people on the other end of the spectrum that are like, that's not affecting me at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend who, her father and grandfather are diagnosed psychopaths and they're good. They're like good people.
Well,
No problem.
obviously, you still have a moral compass, right? You're not going to cross the line and do something to hurt someone else.
Exactly. But you're not like, she told me that when her grandmother died, like her grandmother, I guess, died when her father was still young, like he was a kid. And she says that her grandfather, like, it was like a brain aneurysm or something. Like he came home and he found his wife. Which for anyone, I mean, just like it would wreck you. You would be wrecked, like, but he just called the proper authorities, told them what happened, he just organized everything just kind of without feeling. And she said, and he did everything he was supposed to do, and he filled out all but he did so, and she goes that her father doesn't recall her grandfather crying over any of it. And he didn't remarry, but it was more like not necessarily because he loved her so much, but because he just didn't feel the need. And he took good care of his children, but her father too, she said, my father doesn't remember having a strong reaction to his mother dying when he was 9 or 10 years old. And he just like, it was an event that happened. And he acknowledges that sometimes, like he misses her and she took care of him, but it's not the same impact that somebody with the same emotional reaction, or what we would consider normal emotional reactions would have. But both her father and her grandfather have always played by the rules of society. They know right from wrong. They've done well by their families, but they do so without a feeling the same way, like, and it's just so crazy to me because I was like, that's amazing. That story of just like, he found her and he came home from work and the kids were like, but he just, okay. And he just picked up the phone, called, like found my wife, like, and it's like, okay.
Wow, yeah. But studying something like that would be really good as an author because you do need all these dynamic characters and yeah, why did they become this way or what are they going to do next? And yeah, that's good research.
It is good. Well, and it's something that I really enjoy lending to my characters because, studying psychology, just as a person, my degree is in history, but it's just a personal interest. Yeah, I really I learn a lot, which is great, but I also learn a little bit more about, okay, well, if my character is more neurodivergent, for example, if I'm going to do something like that, then how would I should read up on how these people would react to it. And I
Right.
would have that character react in that way, which is not how I would react, but I'm not, and the effects of trauma on different people and how different people process it, different people, because of course the characters they have some background story issues and things like that, and how have they internalized it? Have they dealt with it, or have they just pushed it all down and hoped it would never surface again? And then how does it come out again if that's the case? And yeah, it's really fun. And it frankly gives a lot of inspiration because when you well, and you're a writer, when you kind of write yourself into a corner a little bit and you go, oh gosh, how are they gonna do this? Then all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a minute, that character might experience a flashback, in this instance, or this character, because they were in the military for so long, would start like strategizing and start like doing this, and you can just say, okay, this is how they would react to it psychologically, and then it goes on from there.
Fun. Yeah. I could tell that you have a lot of diverse characters, and the depth of those characters would be really fun.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's certainly fun to write, and my readers say it's fun to read, so yay.
Yay. Well, I can't wait to dig in. Tell everyone where we can find you and your books.
Sure. So I'm on Amazon is probably the easiest, fastest way. I publish through Amazon and Ingram Spark, so everywhere essentially. But if you go to my website, hollisjoemccollumauthor.com, I have links to everything. All my socials. I'm on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel and I have a Facebook, but I'll be totally honest, my Facebook is just reposting from Instagram and I never ever check it. So, um, so hit me up on Instagram if you would like to DM me, or you can message me directly through my website, but I have links to all my books. And I have a blog, and I also have my event calendar in my what I call updates and musings. I stopped calling it a blog because it's not cool anymore to call it a blog. But that's essentially it's my updates. And I have my event calendar up there. So yeah, I'll be at Multiverse. I'm not I'm an attendee. I'm not presenting or guesting this year at Multiverse. I will be next year. But I'll be there on October 19th, that Saturday, walking around and hanging out with some other author friends and things. So look for me at Multiverse if you're there on Saturday. Book Fest, Trisha and I will be on the Brave New World Building panel on the 27th of October. I think that's Sunday.
Right. Yes, and the Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a Sunday. And and
Yeah, the
that's
27th is right. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it's on. I have all of the dates and times also on my website for that panel, and I'll be there on there live. I know they requested that if we can, we attend live. Trisha, I don't know if you'll be.
Yeah, I do. I have it on my calendar. It'll be fun.
Oh, fun. Yeah. And so we'll both be there to answer questions if you have questions, and the panel is pre-recorded. And then I'll be at Conjuration as a guest and panelist, which is a big fantasy con here in the Georgia area. It's in Duluth, Georgia. That is November 15 through 17. I'm in 11 panels.
Wow.
Yeah, I needed to cry uncle. They tried to put me in 14. I was like, I know this is 3 days, guys, but I actually need to be at my table selling books at some point.
Yeah.
And and then I'll be at the East Tennessee Occult Expo on November 23rd in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Oh, fun. Wow, you have a lot of events there.
I have a lot coming up, and then I'm also I'll be at Jordan Con next year, and I've got some other events that I'm queuing up for next year. I'm hitting the event circuit harder now because that seems to be working for me. I seem to do better when I do events. So I'll be there. You can come find me.
Fun. Yeah, I love author events and I love talking to all the fantasy readers. So yeah, that's why I do this. That's why I love this podcast, because now I can learn about everybody's books.
I know, and then the TBR just gets longer and longer, but that's okay.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Hollis Jo McCollum, for being here, and we will have you back when you publish your next book.
Oh, I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Trisha. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Trisha Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.